Have you ever found yourself driving late at night, with an empty road stretching out before you, and suddenly felt a chill as if something was wrong? As if somehow you weren't really alone? I never believed in ghost stories or urban legends until the day a shadow streaked past my rearview mirror, too swift to be just a trick of the light. My heart raced, and for a moment, I swore I heard a whisper coming from the back seat. But when I looked, there was nothing, only silence and darkness staring back at me. Imagine this. You're on a deserted road, the kind where streetlights are scarce and your cell signal vanishes. The only sounds are the hum of the engine and the wind lashing against the window. Then, suddenly, something appears on the shoulder. A figure, a car without license plates, or perhaps just an eerie sensation that something is following you. You try to ignore it, but with every mile, the feeling grows stronger, more suffocating. It's at that moment that your mind starts playing tricks, or does it? Today, I will take you into the world of creepypastas, horror stories circulating on the internet that are said to be based on real experiences. These are accounts from ordinary people like you and me who have endured moments of pure terror on isolated roads. And the worst part? They might be true. Get ready to hear 3 stories that will make you think twice before hitting the road at night. Stories that blend the fear of the unknown with the paranoia that perhaps, just perhaps, you aren't as safe as you think. So, buckle up, check your rear-view mirror one last time, and come with me. Because after this, you'll be wondering, was that shadow on your shoulder just your imagination or something much more sinister? The hitchhiker was a cold October night, and rain was pouring down as I drove along a secondary road cutting through the countryside. My name is Sarah, and all I wanted was to get home after an exhausting shift at work. The windshield wipers could barely keep up, and the darkness seemed to swallow everything around me. That's when I saw him, a man by the roadside, soaked through, waving with an expression that mingled despair and fatigue. I hesitated, but the thought of leaving him stranded in that storm weighed heavily on my conscience. I pulled over and rolled down the window. He said his name was John and asked if I could give him a ride to the next town. His voice was calm, yet there was something unsettling about it, a low, almost empty tone. Still, I let him in. The scent of rain and damp earth clung to him, and soon we began to chat. I asked what he was doing out there, and he vaguely replied that his car had broken down. I didn't press further. As we drove, he changed the subject and began talking about the road. You know this stretch is famous, right? Many accidents, lost souls wandering about. The way he said it, with a slight smile, sent a shiver down my spine. The conversation grew even stranger. He mentioned details I had never shared with him, like the name of my dog, Max, or that I worked in an office in town. How do you know that? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He merely shrugged and said, I pay attention. My heart pounded, yet I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. The rain drummed against the glass like a relentless beat, and the silence between us grew heavy. After about 20 minutes, he pointed to a desolate stretch of road and said, You can drop me off here. I looked around. There were no houses, no streetlights, no signs of life, just bushes and darkness. Are you sure? I asked. He nodded, opened the door, and stepped out without another word. When I glanced into the rearview mirror, he had already vanished into the night. I couldn't sleep well after that. Something about that encounter haunted me. 3 days later, still disturbed, I decided to return to the spot to understand what had happened. I drove to the place where I had dropped him off and parked my car. That's when I saw it. A small memorial plaque, half hidden by the grass. I approached and read, Jonathan Miller, 1960 to 1985, victim of a fatal accident on this road. My stomach churned. The man I had picked up was a ghost, dead for nearly 40 years. Then I remembered his hand, cold as ice, when he touched my arm to thank me for the ride, and his face, so pale, almost devoid of color under the faint glow of the dashboard. I began to doubt everything. Had I imagined it? Was I so tired that I hallucinated? But the plaque was there, real, staring back at me. Since then, I no longer drive that road at night. Sometimes I dream of him, John, sitting in the passenger seat, gazing at me with those empty eyes. And the worst part? I still don't know why he appeared to me. What did he want? That uncertainty consumes me, and I fear I may never find peace again. The haunted rest stop, it was supposed to be a fun trip. 3 friends, Anna, Lucas, and Pedro, and I decided to hit the road for a weekend at the beach. After hours of driving, it was already midnight when we spotted a rest stop along the highway. The place was in dreadful condition. Rusty signs, broken windows, and an almost illegible billboard. Better than nothing, Lucas remarked as he parked the car. We needed to stretch our legs and use the restroom, so we went in, even though the place screamed abandonment. The moment we stepped inside, something felt off. The air was heavy and humid, and a horrible stench, like rotting meat, wafted from the bathrooms. Gross, Anna murmured, covering her nose. We tried to ignore it and move on, but soon we heard a noise, rhythmic thumping, as if someone were hammering inside the walls. Rats, for sure, Pedro, the rational one of the group, said, though he didn't seem convinced. While we talked, I noticed a shadow move near the exit. I quickly turned around, but there was nothing. Did you see that? I asked. Anna nodded, looking pale, while Lucas laughed it off, saying it was just fatigue. The atmosphere grew tense. The thumping continued, louder now, and the smell worsened. We decided to leave, but when we got to the car, it wouldn't start. This is a joke, right? Lucas exclaimed, pounding the steering wheel. Pedro remained silent, staring at the rest stop's windows as if expecting to see something. Anna began to cry softly. After about 10 attempts, the engine finally roared to life, and we sped away. Not a single word was spoken until we were miles away. The next day, still shaken, we decided to take a look at the place. What we found sent chills down our spines. Years ago, an entire family, a father, a mother, and 2 children, was murdered at that rest stop by a disturbed truck driver. Their bodies were thrown into the restrooms, and the case became local news. Since then, people have claimed that the place is haunted. Online accounts mention shadows, strange noises, and even muffled screams. Everything matched our experience. Anna was devastated, crying for hours. Pedro insisted it was just a rumor, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. I couldn't shake the memory of that smell and the shadow I had seen. Each of us dealt with the incident in our own way. Anna swore she would never travel at night again. Pedro pretended everything was fine, but avoided discussing it. As for me, I'm still unsure what to think. All I know is that that place left a mark on me, a lingering feeling that something was watching us while we were there. I never drive on that highway again, and I pray that whatever remains there stays behind. The ghost car, I was returning from a dinner at a friend's house, alone on a deserted road. It was late, almost 2 in the morning, and the silence was broken only by the sound of tires on the asphalt. That's when I noticed a car behind me. It was old, with dim headlights that flickered irregularly, and it had no license plates. I thought it was odd, but I accelerated in an attempt to shake it off. It didn't help. The car maintained the same distance behind me, as if glued to my tail. I glanced in the rear-view mirror again, and for a moment, it disappeared. I blinked in confusion, and there it was once more. Panic began to set in. I tried changing lanes, speeding up, even slowing down. Nothing worked. The car seemed to follow me effortlessly. I decided to stop at the next gas station to ask for help. When I arrived, I parked and saw the car pull up alongside me, but there was no one inside. The windows were fogged up and the engine was off. I sighed in relief, thinking it was just my imagination. I went inside and spoke with the attendant, a thin, nervous man. "There's a strange car out there," I said. He gave me a peculiar look and asked, "No plates?" I nodded and his face turned pale. "It's the legend. A driver died here 10 years ago in a severe accident. They say his car still appears to people who drive alone." I laughed, dismissing it as small-town gossip. But when I left, the car started by itself. The headlights flickered on, and it began moving, leaving the gas station with no one at the wheel. I sprinted back to my car and sped away, my heart pounding in my throat. Days later, I searched online and found several reports. Drivers speaking of a car without plates that would follow them, appearing and disappearing at will. Some even claimed to have seen a figure at the wheel, a pale man in tattered clothes with empty eyes. Weeks later, I returned to that road. Stupid, I know. There was again, following me. This time, I stopped and stared directly at it. In the driver's seat, I saw a translucent silhouette, a face devoid of emotion staring back at me. Then, the car started on its own and disappeared around a curve. I don't know what it was, but it changed me. Now, I avoid driving at night, and every time I see headlights in my rearview mirror, my stomach twists in fear. The terror of being followed by something inexplicable still haunts me.